Druids are OP. Hey everybody, it's Mitch, and welcome to my next video. Today, we are going to be talking about why Druids are so overpowered in Dungeons & Dragons 3.5. They're, in fact, the most overpowered class in the core rules. So let's get into it. Alright, so first off, what makes Druids so dang OP? Well, the most obvious thing is casters are OP. Full casters are just really good in 3.5. So much better than anything else. And that is by far the most important thing as to why druids are so overpowered. That alone doesn't tell you why they're better than clerics, sorcerers, or wizards, but those four are the top four, as I've discussed in my videos prior. But yes, magic is so good. At high levels, there isn't a real cap. Well, I mean, there is, but it's high enough that it effectively isn't there. And by cap, I mean how many spells per day you get. You just get a lot. In, a 20th level, the number of spells you get, you're not likely to use them all up unless you're doing a long dungeon crawl. And even then, it can be managed. So magic is extremely good. And I know it can be managed because I've done high-level dungeon crawls. I spent a whole year running one with my players. And they still had spells by the end. They were struggling, but they still had spells that they saved for the final boss. And our mages were quite useful throughout the entire dungeon crawl, despite the fact that they were holding back. So yeah, magic is extremely useful. It's something that you really want to have. Like, having full casting is massive. Yeah, you get advantages from, having a sword and shield, but honestly, all the things that you get for that, you can duplicate with a spell. And that's a big part of what makes casters so good. So yeah, there's just not a lot to say about that. Like, fighters and rangers and paladins and barbarians, yeah, they get all sorts of cool stuff. But, magic's just better. And yes, I know paladins and rangers do get spell casting, although it is limited. Their spells actually can be quite good, which actually put them, for the most part, ahead of things like fighters and barbarians and monks. So yeah, casting is just super good, especially when you have full 9th level spells and all that. It's very good. Aside from casting, which is the main reason why druids are OP, what sets them apart from wizards and sorcerers and clerics? Let's start with wizards and sorcerers. Well, wizards and sorcerers, they have a bad base attack bonus, whereas druids and also clerics, so clerics we're going to put with druids for the time being, they have average base attack bonuses. And they don't have to worry about arcane spell failure. That's kind of a really nice advantage that both druids and clerics have over wizards and sorcerers. There's also the whole issue of paired versus spontaneous, but that's a little bit besides the point since all of those except for sorcerers are prepared. There's a lot of advantages that these divine casters have over their arcane counterpart. Now, clerics are pretty dang good themselves. They have access to domains, which, depending on which domain you pick, really let you specialize and really get a lot of utility. Those domains can be extremely good, but you are forced to pick which domains you want to go with. You only get 2 normally, and getting more is tricky. So it can be tricky to figure out which domains. Plus, typically you're going to want a deity, and you have to pick domains associated with that deity. So it can get to be a chore. But druids don't have those restrictions, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, those restrictions with clerics can be very fun to deal with. But druids don't have that. And what they get is arguably quite a bit better than domains. What druids get is they get wild shape, and they get an animal companion. And I know rangers get animal companions too, but ranger animal companions don't keep up. They just don't. Like, ranger animal companions are much weaker. They're going to be useful as mounts. They're going to be useful as scouts. But they're not going to be useful for much else. Druid animal companions, effectively the same thing, but twice the level, are going to be much more useful because they're able to be the same level as you in terms of hit dice. They're going to be viable, whereas at half hit dice, is what the ranger gets, they're not that viable. So that's kind of nice in terms of what the druid gets. They get that animal companion. They get that second character that, okay, yeah, an animal companion is nowhere near as helpful as a character. I would much rather a fighter or a barbarian than I would an animal companion bear. 20th level fighter or 20th level barbarian is going to be more use than the animal companion of a 20th level druid. 100%. But it's close-ish. Like, they're in the same ballpark. Like, I don't know, the animal companion of a druid that's 20th level is going to be, about half as good as a fighter or a barbarian of the same level. So in this case, 20th. Really, it applies at any level. So that's actually massive. Just getting a reasonably competent fighter in your group that's, a bear or whatever it is that you choose. It can be a wolf. There's all sorts of different ways that you can play it. But that animal companion it's like a weaker cohort, and it's competent enough to actually keep up. Now, it's, as I said, it's nothing compared to that of a character, but it's in the same ballpark, which is something that a ranger's animal companion cannot say. That is absolutely massive. In addition, druids also get wild shape, which is just so good. One, wild shape is a great way to heal in combat. There's limitations on that they got rid of in later editions, but in 3.5 it's still pretty big. And on top of that, it allows you to just change so much about your character on the fly. You can gain all sorts of new abilities. Like, you wild shape and it's like, okay, well, now I can fly. Cool. Or I'm wild shape. Now I have fire resistance, or whatever it is. In case fire resistance is a little tricky, but since typically you have to stick with an animal, I'm starting to find ones with resistances, but there's ways to do it. There's just so many different abilities. There's so much utility that you can get out of wild shape. It's absolutely insane. It's so good. I cannot overstate how good wild shape is, especially at higher levels. You can become something really big and take on kind of a role of a barbarian, jump in and have this massive size where you're able to just pummel things for just huge amounts of damage. That's an option, but you can also go really, really small and take on more of a rogue type role and stealth, turn into a cat or turn into something even smaller like a rat and just kind of sneak into the enemy base as a rat. Like, anyone's gonna think twice about the rat running around, especially if it's a lower end place. Like, if it's kind of a scummy place, no one's gonna think twice about the rat hiding in the corner, listening in on things, eating some cheese. Like, that's a normal occurrence there. So it's a way that you could attempt to stealth in and gain information that way. And you also have the option to be a bear if you wanted to. There's so many different options. Plus, you could turn to your normal form and cast. There's feats that'll let you cast spells while in wild shape. It's just so good. Wild shape is really, really nice. Yeah, druids have the restriction of not being able to use metal armor. Same with shields. But that's not that big a deal. Let's be real. Okay, you can't use metal shields. Well, there's wooden counterparts of all the shields. So just use those. And 9 times out of 10, it's not going to matter whether you're using a wood shield or a steel shield. Yeah, if something like heat metal comes up, you'd rather have wood. Things like warp wood's not going to affect a metal shield. Things that light things on fire aren't going to do much to a metal shield, but will a wooden shield. Wood has a lot less hardness, so there's that. There's differences, but the point is, one, wood has some advantages over metal. Wood is not affected by heat metal, and two, honestly, it's not going to come up that often, and it's still decent. Plus, it's not that expensive to get a shield, especially if you're not magically enchanting it. Really not that big a deal. Armor's a little bit trickier, because trying to find heavy armor that isn't metal is tough. It's mostly just light armors and some medium that are non-metallic. But druids are only proficient with light anyways, and for a lot of purposes, light armor's just better. So that's really not a huge deal to stick with light armor. That's not a huge issue at all. And you have an average base attack bonus, the same that a monk and a rogue get. It's not bad at all. Their saves are pretty solid. They get a good will save. I believe it's a good fortitude and a bad reflex, although I haven't checked in a little while. That's very much off the top of my head. That's the druid for you. They get so much good stuff. Plus, they can, spontaneously cast Summon Nature's Ally, which is a very versatile spell. You can use summoning to great effect. You can summon things that will then heal you, which is a really good option. You can use summons as fodder, which just can help distract enemies. summons can just be extremely useful, and they just give you a ton of versatility. And a lot of Druid spells themselves are extremely versatile. The Druid spell list is really, really good. I would say the Wizard Sorcerer's probably a little better, but not much. Most of their best stuff is the same in both of them, so that's a thing. Two, the Druids get some really good stuff that Wizards Sorcerers don't. I mean, yes, Wizards and Sorcerers get some really good stuff that Druids don't, but I'd say it's pretty close overall, and I'd only give a slight edge to the Wizard Sorcerer. Wizards and Sorcerers don't have all those other advantages. They don't have Wild Shape. They don't have that Animal Companion, which is a second character that's just kind of wrapped up into the bundle. Like, yes, please. They also get a bunch of other just okay little abilities here and there, wild empathy and things like that. Just little things. They don't really contribute a lot, but they do get some little things here and there, which are nice. They're not the reason to take the class, but they're nice to have, and you get a bunch of other things, so might as well. It's like, okay, these are cool, but yeah, Wild Shape and Animal Companion are just so good for the Druid. So good, plus full casting. It's such a good class. I know I'm saying that a lot, but I can just not overemphasize how good the Druid is and why it's so overpowered. Now, their biggest thing is spell casting, so are they really that much better than the Wizard, Sorcerer, Cleric? Not really. The casting is a huge part of it, so they're not going to really overtake those other ones by that much, but they do have significant advantages with those things. So yeah, that's the Druid for you and why they are so freaking overpowered. But anyways, that's all I have to say. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like. Maybe subscribe to the channel for more Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 content. Down in the description below, I have links to my Discord as well as to my Twitch. I do stream on Twitch, and I have a nice little Discord. Make sure you get your rolls when you show up there. But anyways, as always, I'm Mitch, and I'll be seeing you